Hey, welcome back to the High Ticket Woman. Today I have with me, this one's pretty exciting, everybody. I have Bern Mendez, and he is a neuroscience-based dating and relationship coach with 14 years of experience helping women like me, accomplished women in midlife, to form deeply committed partnerships. His YouTube channel is one of the top 12 dating advice sources for women worldwide, with over 30 million views and 227,000 plus subscribers. He's been featured by CNN, HuffPost, Redbook, Univision, and Mind Body Green. He's coached women in 24 countries, including Fortune 100 executives, physicians, and entrepreneurs who now enjoy relationships defined by emotional depth, respect, and lasting commitment. Bern, we're going to have a great conversation. Welcome to the High Ticket Woman.
Thanks so much, Libby. I'm super excited to connect with you here.
Well, you know what? I haven't asked anybody this question in ages. What does being high ticket mean to you?
High ticket means, well, it has many connotations. In the coaching world, high ticket means not the price of an ebook, So that's more of like on the marketing side of things. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily expensive because expensive is relative to what you get. I mean, like a McDonald's burger is cheap, but is it really cheap if it's not good for you? So
Cheap in every way.
yeah, for me, it's more about something that is maybe slightly much more personalized and more in tune with the hand holding and growth that people need in order to continue their growth. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to build on this whole concept of you get what you invest.
Yeah.
So when you invest in yourself, you are elevating your expectations for yourself and your life. All right, so let's save it to what really matters here. I want to know. Let's just hit the ground running. Why is it that some of the most accomplished women who've built careers, raised families, achieved so much, still feel like love is the one area of life they can't figure out?
Wow, it's a great first question, and there's so many different answers. I'll share a couple. One has to do with this notion that I think most people alive today have a false idea in terms of what is natural. And I say by that when you hear love, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, love is the most natural thing in the world. And love as a concept and as a feeling I mean, you have it with your caregiver, ideally, but it's the type of connection we're seeking right now, which is not just the things our grandparents were seeking or even our parents were seeking, is way more sophisticated than that. And that is not natural, and that is not normal, and that's not the common thing people experience. So the first reason why, at a more basic level, is because we want something that has not ever happened really in human history for the long haul, and we don't have the skills yet to go for it. Now, when you're somebody who's really accomplished and who's already made a lot of things happen in the world, you have a few other challenges. One being that you want somebody who's more of an equal. You don't just want some dude who's scraping by. You want somebody who can match you in many different ways, not just financially, but educationally, intellectually, sexually, in so many different ways. And that diminishes the pool of human beings available. And if you add a third ring to the scope, which is the same energy that's required to make a business work is not the same energy that's required to create connection with someone. But if you go into it with that same level of let's make things happen and maybe pushing a little more than you need to, and maybe forcing things in a way that maybe would be really successful for a podcast even, but not for a connection with a man, then you get met with a resistance or not somebody not valuing what you bring to the table because you're super available or because you're pushing very hard, or sometimes something that happens is I work with lots of doctors, for example, and one of the things that doctors are trained on, not just from school but also through practice, is to in some way close their hearts, because when you have to see 100 patients a day or 50 patients a day, let's say, not be crazy a number, and you have surgeries and there's all these moving parts, if you really stop and feel the deepest level of empathy for someone, then you may not be able to function properly and do the surgery the way you need to. So you have to kind of like detach from your feelings a little bit. So when you have somebody who's done a lot of that and then is now pulled into this pool of create deep connection from your heart, it's a shift in energy that sometimes we're not trained to do. So those are a few of the reasons why I found lots of intelligent women today are facing this challenge. And if we add to that, and I don't want to extend my super long answer, but there's so many different aspects of the way society works right now that don't work for women. And it's not even funny. I mean, I'm doing a research that I'm about to publish that has 4 different layers of challenges women in midlife phase, but I'll share one just to begin with, one of 30 data points. If you're a single woman in the ages of, I don't know, 40 to 64, which is considered midlife, and you live in the US or Canada, or you live in Europe, in most parts in Europe, you have a college degree and you have median income or above. We're not talking mega rich, we're talking median income or above, college degree, BA or higher. And in that age group, there's 10 women for every 6 men. So, I mean, that's the beginning of this blind demand challenge. If you add to that other layers, then that's why it starts becoming more of a challenge, for women today.
Yeah, and you're explaining what I see every day when I work with clients who are complaining about these issues. I want to circle back around to the energy thing because I'm
Sure.
really curious to hear what you have to say about this. I hear a lot of times people referring to masculine energy and feminine energy, and
Mhm.
women who are really accomplished, who built successful careers,
Huh.
and especially in the corporate world, they have to show up in a certain way with a certain kind
Mhm.
of energy.
Yeah.
It is really counterproductive to being in a relationship with a man. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. And I'll start by saying that that's a very useful frame at a high level. I've used it myself throughout work, and I find it increasingly challenging in some ways. And I'll share why. Because I think that a lot of people take almost like the caricature of that
Yeah.
to almost like, oh, I'm in my masculine, so do as I say, or be in your
Simplify it.
feminine, just
Yeah.
feel and flow. And like, no, that's not how life works. Yes, there's that
Yeah.
sacred integration between both that is
Yeah.
very nuanced and it's not as easy as black and white. But
Yeah.
there is something to be said about there's an openness and a vulnerability and a connection to heart that is much more likely to attract someone. If you're a woman, heterosexual woman, and you want to attract a guy who is maybe connected to his purpose and maybe who wants to be a giver and provider, that is more likely to call that part in him to step up. And I think that when you look at it that way, if you're able to really balance those two things, and it's not just like churning off your masculine, it's how to know when to open, when to close, when to soften, when to stand your ground, how to share the things you want as an invitation versus a complaint. There's a difference in saying, hey, I hate when you do that, or I would love it if you do it this way. One is inviting, the other one's like, oh, I don't do it that way. Like there's a piece in context already for 30 minutes before the person might already feel genuinely excited to do things that way. So I think that in that polarity world of the masculine and feminine, there's a lot of interplay that can be helpful if you connect with someone who's conscious enough to really honor it. The challenge that I find sometimes is not only that women get more focused on the doing of life and maybe slightly less vulnerability, which they've had to. It's a survival mechanism. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be hardened in my heart and I don't want to be vulnerable. It's like if you don't show up that way, sometimes you get a lot of pain. And women who've experienced a lot of painful situations from dad to uncle to multiple guys along the way, then that's kind of how they learn to be. So if you don't have someone who's showing up in a way that feels safe to you, then the likelihood that you'll be able to open up and share that part of you, I mean, for a good reason, it's not going to happen. So there's this opportunity right now, I think, today for both men and women to show up for each other with kindness and vulnerability and empathy and nuanced conversations that can create this spark and this aliveness that both people are looking for. But I see it all the time with my clients when uh, they don't have to get surgery or Botox or get a mini skirt and new clothes or go to a bar if they simply soften a little bit in the way they connect. No, I mean with the way they make eye contact, the way they smile, the way they let their natural shine come outward, they create very powerful results. Sometimes no one stopped me in 10 years. And for the first time in 10 years, somebody stops them and say, hey, you're so beautiful. Or I love your energy. And just out of the blue.
Yeah. What originally drew you into this work? Just curious.
I mean, I think anyone who is honest, who's brought to this type of work, whether it's therapy or coaching of this nature, if they're really honest, it's personal pain. I mean, and for me, it's no exception. You know, it's like the on one side of the fence, I would say two things. One, the feeling of being really depressed at a young age, not knowing how to change it, and then finding a solution that felt gave me hope. And then thinking to myself, this is something I have to share with the rest of the world, and how can I do it from a very early age? Younger than that, I mean, the feeling of being rejected, not feeling good enough, feeling that I couldn't create connections in at my young age, being a teenager with women the way I wanted to, and feeling that I would connect with people who would reject me, not despite that fact, but secretly because of it. And then I would get to reinstate that feeling of I'm not worthy or good enough. And then like, oh, the work doesn't work. So having gone through all that stuff and finding solutions, that's the first part. Second part is connecting with an audience that I wasn't intentionally creating videos for women. I was creating videos for human beings. It just so happened that 90+% of the people who listened to my stuff were women, and then having lots of conversations. And by this point, I've had thousands of conversations with women throughout my work. But even before then, just uh, this is an area that came up again and again, and
Yeah.
something that I knew required a bit more thoughtfulness and a bit more specific focus versus something that I was doing. It was more generic. So having a sensitive heart and feeling there's this pain that is very clear and very specific, and there's a way out. I can apply some of the things that I've been applying for other solutions to this, and really learning, because it's not just winging it, just like learning, going back and to the drawing board and learning about attachment, learning about
Yeah.
what creates connection with someone, what person interaction, all those skills that no one ever taught me, but I had to self train on and then get mentors for, then became something that once you start applying it, you can see quick changes in human beings of the kind that are so fulfilling to witness. You know, I was recording something today, a little training for my clients, and I was sharing the story of a wool red. It helped. And this morning, out of the blue, I see in Facebook a post from her that was a post because she says that she has three anniversaries a year. One, the day she got married. Another one, the day she started became the girlfriend of this guy. Another one, the first date she went to. And this she was describing the first date she went with this person and all the stuff they've gone through. And like it was a love letter on a post that made me cry just from saying, hey, he's someone who was reaching out, feeling depleted. This doesn't work. Guys are blah blah blah, and then finally something changes, and that type of experience is so fulfilling to witness that it kind of makes up for all the hardship and all the late nights editing videos and all the but this is tough to learn and I have to
Why you do what you do.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's powerful. You know, and I think there's a lot of women in midlife that are just sort of secretly asking themselves, maybe it's too late for me, or is it too late for me to find the kind of love I've always wanted? What do you say to that woman right from the beginning?
I say that I first of all is that I understand. I don't want to come across as saying, "Oh, well, you're crazy for thinking that." You know, I get it. I get why you will feel that way. I get why you go on a dating app and get maybe 50 messages with SUP question mark and hey beautiful and maybe a dick pic in the mix, and why you would not be excited about putting yourself out there more. So first thing is I get it. Second thing I'll say is that one of the things that I've really focused on from the beginning is not to say the problem doesn't exist. The problem is strong. The problem is not insignificant. We wouldn't be having this conversation about this topic if the problem were simple. It's a complicated systemic problem, but there are solutions for it. If you understand the depth of the problem, then you can solve it. So there's something really powerful in film called the second act. You know, and that's the only reason why anyone ever watches a movie. It's not the movie of the girl who is born in a castle and gets the prince who marry her and then gets a pony for her birthday and has a beautiful family. Like who watches that movie? No one. But it's the movie of the person who had everything and lost it all. You know,
Right.
lost it all and had to find himself again
Yeah.
and had to mm, sweat tears, and it's a hero's journey, and that every human being, the reason why that's so compelling is because we all have that inside each one of us. There's a hero or heroine inside of you that's waiting to be activated, and if this is an area that you choose to step into, because I get clients who say to me at the beginning of the work, but I've done this for 10 years. Well, who's the I who's been doing it, and what are the things you've been doing? Or I've tried everything. It's maybe five things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things. So if you tweak the approach, if you tweak the mindset, if you tweak the energy, those three things can change the whole game for you.
Well, and not only that, who you were back when you were trying whatever you were trying,
Yeah.
gonna look a whole lot different now with who you are now with our new mindset shift. So, I mean, I think there's a lot uh, to be said about that too. I know that you say, and this is interesting, you say that chemistry can actually sabotage lasting love. And I think that's probably a really surprising thing for listeners to hear. Can you explain why
Oh,
when we're drawn, the thing that draws us in first of all is that chemistry? How is it that that can be the thing that sets us up for heartbreak later?
well, chemistry is needed for a long-term fulfilling romantic relationship. So I'm not here to say it's not important. It is important. It's just when chemistry is explosive from the beginning, then you get a chance to, your brain gets a chance to play this game where you see a letter and you make up the entire paragraph based on that one letter, which is there's no difference in your brain when you feel connected to someone at a high level of intensity and a brain of someone who's doing crack cocaine. Same thing, same activation, same
Same
level,
chemicals flowing through your brain and your body.
same parts of the brain, same
Yeah.
dopamine, serotonin lower, so you get to focus obsessively on someone. So because that's taking place, that by nature, just the nature of that is going to create a mirage effect with a person in front of you. And if you take it an extra route and you go the, well, let's get physical really quickly and let's have sex really quickly, and then oxytocin is in the mix, then what happens is you get attached to someone really deeply without really understanding who they are. And then when the effect of that goes away, and it does go away, then what happens is I talk about this jokingly, but you find yourself on a dark alley on a town you're not sure where you. I mean, how the name of the town, eating tuna from a can, and asking yourself, how did I get here? And that's when somebody wakes up and, oh, this guy's aggressive or he's abusive, but I still can't get out of it. He understands me. It's a challenging thing. So I think that chemistry is powerful. I think it can grow through time. I think it's also challenging because we're so wired for it, and we most of us are secretly optimizing for that much more than kindness and compassion and all the things that people have on lists
Really
out
matter.
the window when hotness gets into the nervous system. You know, there's like, oh, that will get better. You know,
Yeah, and I think I think it really clouds our lens,
oh, for sure.
so that we ignore the lack of kindness, the lack of thoughtfulness, the lack of consideration
For sure.
because the hotness is taken front and center. I love that. You
Yeah.
describe your approach as neuroscience based. So how does understanding the brain change the way women approach love and commitment then? If we're not going to focus as much on chemistry, what are we focusing on?
Well, it's not that we're not focusing on chemistry, it's that chemistry has to be measured with regulating your nervous system, right? The reason why focusing on the brain is important, why neuroscience is powerful in dealing with aspects of love, is because you understand that it's not just something that's happening to you as a human being because you're not smart enough or good enough. It removes shame from the equation. I'll give you a very practical example. And I'm sure you've had cases of someone who's maybe really attached to someone who's toxic or really bad for them, and they can't get out of that situationship, not even a relationship. The person texts them in the morning, and then they're super happy and excited, and then 30 days go by, and the person's disappear, and then they show up again with flowers, and they have great sex, and then they go away again. That intermittent reinforcement basically is a cycle of addiction. So what happens really practically is when you connect with someone and that's taking place, it's like the little mouse that pulls a little pellet and gets a little food every time. Nothing happens to that mouse. But if you get food every now and then, you get addicted to asking for food. Same thing happens with human beings. You get addicted to a human being. Like there's a dopamine release when that takes place. And then there's a sense of uh, it's not happening anymore. So there's going to be maybe some cortisol released, which accentuates that dopamine that was released. And then you go through withdrawals when the person's not showing up, then the person shows up again. There's another dopamine release, then that fades away and the cycle continues. So when you understand that sometimes what's happening is a cycle of chemical addiction versus you're not, you don't love yourself enough. Like you can love yourself and still be addicted to someone. So when you understand things from that perspective, then you know that the solution is not just affirmations. It's not just positive thinking. It's we need to do something to disrupt the cycle from our nervous system being hijacked from that. And that's where breathing exercises and somatic movement, and that's where regulating in multiple different ways before and after dates makes a difference in how you get a chance to see yourself. Same thing with attachment. I mean, like you have to rewire your nervous system if you're actually attached or avoid, right? To be able to have a new expression. And that doesn't happen just by conversing with yourself. That happens through a lot of work that's attached. I mean, that's in many ways connected to your nervous system. So that's why that's the neuroscience part of it, is how to make it as practical as possible for human beings to remove the shame, but to do something different than they would have done had they only thought that it's something that's an emotional problem. It's much more than that.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because now there's a very tangible way to begin creating a different experience, as opposed to what's wrong with me. I have this problem. And like you said, the shame is attached to that. What are some of the most common neural or emotional patterns that you see accomplished women being stuck in these unfulfilling relationships? What are some of those patterns that you see that are pretty?
I mean, there's a few that repeat themselves, and and there's more to it than just the neuroscience behind it. But I see many clients who are, and you being a therapist, you probably see this a lot. It's like the wound that never got healed, and people go back to it again and again, not despite it, but because of it. Secretly, you sense, you can smell that a mile away. This person, that woman would say to me, "This guy, so I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's just something so special." Yeah, it's your dad showing up again. So
Yeah.
the pattern that I see is that. Go ahead.
The one area of their life that they just can't seem to figure out, and they don't know why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sometimes the pattern is going for that thermostat temperature that you were wired for early in life, even though you want something different, and keep seeking that again and again. Another pattern that I see that's common is that, which we talked about earlier, is showing up with a lot of maybe more of a pushy energy towards creating connection, or more of a I've been hurt a lot, so I'm going to take a very scientific approach into I'm going to investigate you right now as we have this date, and going through the questionnaire, and it's something that feels so pushy that even if the guy could fit the boxes, he's like, it feels too much. That's another pattern that I see women show up in. Another one that I see is, because there's a lot of human beings that I work with who are highly empathetic, it's that pattern of I want to give, not just because I'm generous, but because I feel afraid if I don't continue giving, that people will disappear, or they'll vanish, or they'll abandon me. So it's, how do you help someone who is genuinely wanting to give to also understand what they're feeling at any moment in time, so they can just bypass it and just continue giving, but maybe push back a little bit, or say, you know what, right now, this would feel better. If you don't understand your feelings, your needs are very unlikely to be met, because from feeling, the need can come clear. If you don't have that, if you're feeling weird, what do you do with that, with weird? If you're feeling disrespected, well, that's something different, right? So
Being able to identify accurately what you're really feeling, and then translate that into boundaries, realistic expectations, etc.
yeah, emotional literacy is a powerful thing, even as something as basic as taking out the emotion, like the emotions wheel, and looking at it multiple times a day, even without anything challenging happening. What's going on in here? What am I experiencing? What am I feeling? Okay, if you're with someone, again, do a little inventory after the end of the date. How did you feel? Are there moments where you push down on your emotions? If so, what happened? So having more of the ability to step back a little bit from the confusion, from the storm of emotions, and take a more nuanced approach, and almost like slowing down. If you slow down, you can see a lot more of what's happening.
Think you can use your head, not just
The prefrontal cortex versus the limbic brain. Yeah, for sure.
okay. I want to talk about what I think is the elephant in the room, and that is this gender polarization now that we're seeing going on. Like, I just see so many social media posts where men are bashing women and women are bashing men,
Yeah.
and you don't dare jump in there and try to have an even moderate tone, because then you're bashed. when you work with women, how much of that are you wading through? Like men are jerks, men are losers, and these universal labels that are being attached. And
I think there's
never,
definitely a lot of that going on right now.
yeah.
Nature of the work I do, and also probably based on the content I put out there, most of the women who come to my work are more nuanced than. I'm not saying there's anything wrong if somebody doesn't feel that way, but they have that notion of, I really want to buy into this. I'm having a little bit of a challenge with this versus all guys are a-holes, for example. So I have but I do see out there, and they encounter this not all the time, but sometimes, those Andrew Tate type of guys, the elephant in the room. I talk about it in my work, is the patriarchy is the elephant in the room. Like, we're swimming in it. Most people don't acknowledge it. People say it doesn't even exist right now. Some people, and it's like, are you crazy? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that? Is part of the work. How do you help someone to understand it, to have conversations about it, to express what your needs are in the midst of something that doesn't feel uh what doesn't feel honoring of who you are as a woman, and also identifying that there's some people that, in the name of tradition, will want you to be in the kitchen making sandwiches for him, and if that's not what you want, and most people don't, then it's no thanks, and moving on.
And not being worried, coming from this scarcity mindset of, he's the last guy left on earth who's going to want to date me, so I have to do this.
Yeah.
Um,
And you see it as simple. I mean, I have my clients go, when they're starting to date, I have them ask for a video call before they go on a first date, for multiple reasons. One of the reasons being, if you go on a video call, you'll quickly notice if there's a hell no type of experience that you would have found in the first 30 seconds of the date, and now you're stuck with them for 2 hours. So you will
good advice. Yeah.
yeah, imagine that it's going to take you half an hour if you're really fast to get ready, if not more, and then half an hour to get there, and then 2 hours with the person, and an hour coming back. So that's 3 to 4 hours of your life that will never come back. That can be eliminated in 5 minutes by having that conversation. The second reason why I do it is because if a guy pushes back on that, that shows so much in 2 seconds, right? Because the level of consciousness somebody needs to have as a man to not understand the disparity in risk of women dating versus men, it just blows my mind. If somebody's like, I don't want to do it, but she basically stands a lot more to lose, then that shows you something. So
There's a lot of disrespect, but also shows an inability to step into her shoes and
yeah, I mean, do we start off?
really like that, because with the whole online dating experience, it's not even a love-hate thing, it's like a hate thing. Everybody's using online.
You're the first person who's ever shared that. Everybody loves online dating. What are you talking about? I'm joking.
I never hear anybody say they love it. They all hate it, but it's almost like they feel like they're stuck, that they have to use it. And so they'll get on the platforms, and then they'll get frustrated, and they'll get off the platforms, and then they'll get back on again, and then they're off. And it's this back and forth thing. But having that video call really streamlines the whole process and saves it, because it's exhausting to go on multiple dates.
For sure, especially I'd rather you go on fewer dates, but higher quality ones, and lots of dates that cloud the vision of all dates suck. Like Helen Fisher used to talk about this. She did a lot of work for Match.com before she passed away, and she would talk about dating apps not as dating apps but as introduction apps, because that's all they are. And when you quickly realize that that's the case, then you take it offline as quickly as possible.
Yeah, they're not dating apps. They're video.
Yeah,
I can write that down somewhere.
Yeah, the dating app process is one where I strongly recommend using them if you have a system that's not going to create a lot of pain in your life. For example, one of the bits of research I came across right now as I'm doing my research is they did a study with 500 participants in terms of dating apps, and they found out that both men and women, by week 12, if you do dating apps the way most people use them, where they open them up multiple times a day, they don't regulate before or after, they think that there's maybe 30% of great people there instead of 1%, which is the reality of people that make match. So by week number 12, the level of emotional burnout was the same as ICU nurses. This is just 12 weeks of use of those. Yeah. So while I recommend them, I recommend two things. One, having a very specific strategy of using them where you get to regulate. You only open them a couple times a day, not all day long, because otherwise you get addicted to it. And then the second one is you need to create a plan of action that is heavily focused on in-person connections. Because if you don't have that plan of action, then the little tyrant, which is what I call the algorithm of the app, doesn't land you the number of guys that you want that week, then you feel like the system is rigged against you. But if you're besides that, that's just one of 10 things you're doing. You're also going out and creating connections in real world, in specific locations, in curated rooms, then you feel more abundant about the whole thing. And it's much more likely for you to meet someone and more quickly identify who they are in real life, in a right room, than maybe through tons of searches. Even though it still works, having both lessens the intensity of, oh, this is my sole source of connections with the world.
I love that. How does dating in midlife differ from dating in your 20s or 30s?
It's very different.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's different is, I mean, first of all, because in your 20s, you're far more likely to want something that is a pie in the sky idea about what love is. You haven't really suffered enough, most likely, in order to understand the differences, but also because there's the criteria is different. So there's plenty more options, right? When you're younger and when your filter mechanism hasn't tightened a lot. What happens sometimes through life is you get to understand who you are, and that's a good thing. But you also, I mean, and women do this a lot and men do this a lot. So it's not exclusive to men or women, but we get to tighten the criteria in such a way that we mathematically X ourselves out of finding someone. I'll give you a very practical example. I've never had a woman come to my work saying, I want a short man. I mean, it's never happened. I'm not saying no one wants a short man, but never has it happened that somebody says that. But I've had plenty of women who say, I can only date a tall man. And I say, how tall is tall? Well, 6'2". Imagine 6'2" is your first of 30 wishes. And that means that you eliminate 97% of men, 93% of men in the US on your first wish. And you also want, I mean, like, so if we tweak those variables in a way where you can still have something that's fulfilling, but not getting you out of the game, that's part of what this work is about. Also helping someone to distill the base notes. What are the things that are really essential and important to you? And then not lower your standards, but change the standards in some way where you're not putting something as ridiculous as 6'2" in the same realm of kind and compassionate, because one will determine fulfilling long life. The other one, a little more chemistry, but that's about it.
You also talk about women unintentionally sabotaging relationships by giving too much or by ignoring red flags. So what are some of the key signs that someone might be doing this?
Giving too much would be someone who typically is either it's an empath, and also has learned that the way to survive as a child survival mechanism, adaptive mechanism, is to always give more. So that, I mean, it's very understandable and it happens. I think people who tend to be more anxiously attached tend to do this more than people who are more avoidantly attached. So if you're someone who's facing anxious attachment, the likelihood you're going to be overgiving is more, it's more, because you feel like if you do that, then they'll never leave me, or I'm going to show my worth or my value, and I'll let them know. They'll see how awesome I am. So that's something that happens a lot. A sign of that would be when you recognize that the majority of the times you're initiating, the majority of the times you're the one who's offering word of advice, the majority of the times you're the one who's listening, the majority of the times you're the one who's saying, hey, let's do this or that. So when you step back a little bit, and it's very scary for people to step back, especially when they haven't had what they wanted for a while and they feel like this person might be it. It's very scary to step back, but you get a chance to recognize, is this person even showing up half as much as I am? And if the answer is no, the answer to that is that, well, let me give them more. Is like, and sometimes it's not just like I'm going to play the game of stepping back, is having a conversation. And it's hard to have that conversation. Hey, John, I noticed that right now in this dynamic, here's what's happening. And maybe just my interpretation. What shows up for you? Or what do you think about this? Not even you're doing it wrong or change this, but open-ended questions that allow the other person to kind of gauge where you're at and even see if they're in the same frame of universe to interpret that information.
Yeah. So this is what you're really saying is look for reciprocity.
Reciprocity is part of it, but also notice if you're someone who tends to overgive, notice when you're doing it because you're genuinely generous or when you're doing it because you're afraid. And there's a difference, because the one when you're afraid has strings attached. Because when you give with strings attached, if they don't do something in return, it feels really bad. When you give without expectations, and I'm not saying that at the end of the day you don't want somebody who's reciprocal, but if when you give just more generously, then you're not measuring or counting as much. So kind of gauge
Yeah.
where your proclivity is.
You're attaching your worth to how they respond to you, which
Yeah,
ugh. Okay, so I want to talk about all the labels that we use now to define relationships. And
sure.
this could be a soapbox for me, but I find it so annoying that, we've got this, we're dating casually or we're in a situationship or it's just casual or it's friends with benefits or we like each other, but we haven't had the exclusive talk.
Yeah.
So technically that means we could be seeing other people and even sleeping with them, but I don't like the idea that he's doing that, but we haven't had the talk yet.
Yeah.
Speak to that.
I think that it's something that is very, very common. Many of the people who come to me with challenges are precisely in the middle of something that started as a friend with benefits. They want more. The guy doesn't want more. And now they're kind of stuck and they haven't had the conversation and they're afraid because they kind of know if they have the conversation, more likely than not, the guy's going to, well, I never wanted that to begin with. So what are you talking
And I
about?
told you that up front.
Yeah. So sometimes it's that's where the chemistry piece kicks in that we're talking about. Is like when you're too deep into it, you're super attached to someone, then the fear of losing them becomes a challenge. So I think that the best way to deal with this in my line of work is to be, instead of the defensive, the offensive. And what I mean by that is when you connect with someone, you're a, I don't know, 50-year-old woman who is intelligent and wants a lifelong companionship with someone. Maybe it's marriage, maybe it's not, but you definitely want to live with someone and you want to create a home with that person. And you connect with a guy who seems to fit the boxes and you ask one extra question before you even meet. Tell me a bit more about what you're looking for in a relationship. And the person might say, you know what, right now I'm just ending this divorce. I'm like, okay, like why have the first date to begin with if the person's not even sure what he wants or he's sure he wants something different? Like having the clarity of asking that question early on makes a huge
If I'm
difference.
going to be the one who changes his mind.
Yeah, sure.
I know no one else has been able to do that, but maybe I could do that.
Exactly. So I think there's something powerful to be said also about knowing how you're going to date. And if you're someone who's going to date intentionally, I see nothing wrong with dating more than one person at a time, so long as you're transparent about it. And so long as
Absolutely.
my strong recommendation is don't be having sex with those people until you become exclusive, because of the attachment situation where you could easily get attached to someone who's not good for you. And then 4.5 years later, you're still with that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
You're speaking my language, Bern. Okay, so for women who are listening right now and they feel like they're always emotionally attracted to unavailable men, what are the first steps that you would share with them, practical steps that they can take to rewrite that pattern?
okay, if you notice that you're regularly at connecting with emotionally available, because I have a lot of people who share with me, I have a problem. And I say, what's the problem? I seem to attract lots of guys who are unavailable. And that's not a problem if you don't follow through and also connect back with them. So the problem is not guys who are unavailable connecting with you, is you giving them the time of day and meshing with them in some way. So I'd say the first thing is be compassionate with yourself, and instead of saying I'm wrong or I'm flawed, is understand that there's some part of you that's getting some benefit. And it's really important for you to figure out what that benefit is, because if not, then you just try to do the worst of both worlds. It's like I'm doing it wrong and I have to change this thing that's giving me a secret payoff. So what's the payoff right now? If, like, let's say if we eliminated, like, if that person showed up, the way I describe it is, if the right guy showed up for you in all the qualities you want and available and the whole thing, what are some of the things that in the back of your mind would make it still challenging? Like, what would be the next problem you would face? And then something comes up, maybe like, well, if the right guy showed up, maybe I lose my independence, or maybe I lose my freedom, or maybe there's hidden problems beyond the juicy benefits, you know? So what are the juicy challenges that would show up for you if the guy showed up? And also, what would be the problem? I mean, what would be, so when you start identifying those things, because people tend to think of relationships and dating sometimes in the world of, if I have this relationship, heaven. If I don't have this relationship, hell. But there's two other quadrants that people typically skip, which is if I have the relationship, what is the pain? And if I don't have the relationship, what's the benefit? Well, I can fart in my sleep and no one will, I mean, I don't have to get physically, emotionally, spiritually naked in front of anyone. No one will ever leave me because the guy's actually out from it. So first identifying those things. And then I would say, and this is where uh, I would say it in the kindest of ways, not because of self-serving interest, but if you are a smart woman who's been dealing with this issue for years and years and years, no TikTok video, no advice that I give you right now will change things. Work with someone who can help you. And that could be in therapy, depending upon where you are in life. That could mean coaching, but it's like, don't do this thing alone. I mean, don't read a book and try to speak Spanish or Italian. I mean, like that doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is really, 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 really key. I mean, if there's some sort of deep-seated pattern that is in your life and you keep making the same choices over and over, you need somebody outside of yourself to help you break this pattern.
Yeah. And to give you some tools that you don't have, and to also make it easy for you to know that it's nothing wrong with you. It's just the strategy you're following isn't serving you. So there's multiple ways to do it. I mean, there's the whole rewiring your nervous system has multiple paths to it. But accountability is definitely helps you. Insight, being able to read the cereal box if you're inside. How can you read it? It's just really hard when you show up and you tend to generalize, having somebody say, well, it's not this, perhaps it's this. Oh, that makes sense. And then time and time again, finding a new way to look at things, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, your YouTube channel has over 30 million views. So ladies, you know, that tells you something. Bern's got some experience and some knowledge here. How do listeners connect with you? How can they learn more about your coaching?
The easiest way is to go to my website. It's bernmendez.com. That's BERNMENDZ.com. And from there, I have links to a quiz you can take if you want to find out blind spots that you may be having right now in attraction. You can go to my YouTube channel, and there's also a link to apply to work with me if you're interested.
Okay, cool. So bernmendez.com, and we'll put that in the show notes for today. I mean, I love talking about this. I mean, like this is sort of like the heart of what I love to do is help people connect. And when you were sharing, what was this statistic earlier? Like for every 10 women that are that have a college degree and are accomplished, there's like 6 available men. Was that?
Yeah.
That's
In the med, yeah. Yeah, 10 to 6 in the
I
US.
feel very grateful to have the man that I have. To be back out in the dating world and having to do this all over again, because I'm divorced and now remarried, and I just think, man, I feel incredibly blessed because if you go back
Yeah.
out there again, but but what you're saying is it's totally doable.
It's definitely doable. It's
Yeah.
if you want something that's exceptional and extraordinary, don't go for the traditional route of thinking. I mean, like the worst advice I've ever heard in my life is just wait, it will happen. Just wait. What will happen if you just wait? Nothing will happen.
Just sit on your couch and watch Netflix, and one day the magical moment will arrive, and
Yeah.
will happen at the
And there are people who win the lottery, but it's one in I don't know how many millions. So if you don't want to be one of those waiting for that magic to happen, there's work that can be done that can help you get what you want much faster and with a lot less pain. And beyond those things, it's not because many of the clients I work with, it's not they got the guy, yes, but they got a different version of themselves. They got a version of themselves that's more
which is the
open.
most important thing.
Yeah, more alive, more connected, more expressive, and that's a benefit regardless of any guy.
Yes. Bern, thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it, and I enjoy this conversation too.
Yeah, it was great. So I know there are women out there who are listening to this, and you may already be married and you might be thinking, well, how does this apply to me? Well, you know, there is something valuable for you to see in the relationship that you have right now that can also be tweaked, changed through the same process that Bern walks you through to find a man in the first place. Wouldn't you agree, Bern?
Yeah,
Like,
I
so
think
much
that,
of this is mindset shift, right?
and the way you show up, and the way you value each
It's
other, and
yeah,
and the way you continue falling in love, because falling in love, I mean, continues happening. It's not a once that
absolutely.
I'm
It
done with
needs
it.
to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like a one shot thing.
Yeah, it's a constant decision, you know? It's like I choose this person today, and what am I going to do to make it work?
So to find you on YouTube, you just put in your name, or is there
Bern Mendez, and you'll find me right.
Bern Mendez? Okay. Well, everybody, you know how to find you know how to find Bern. So go check out his channel, go check out his website. And for those of you who are struggling in your marriage and you want help with that, you know how to reach out to me, debbiecaudle.com. So until next time, get ready. Here it comes. Keep showing up, keep staying curious. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be teachable. I'll see you next week.